Hi and welcome to my shop. Today I'm going to show you how I reattach the headstock on this Epiphone Les Paul guitar. This belongs to the guitar player in my band, and one night after a gig he packed it in a padded gig bag and leaned it against our trailer and forgot about it and drove off, and it landed in the street. But the bartender found it in the street that night, and our guitar player went back and picked it up. But unfortunately the headstock had broken completely off. And this is actually the second time the headstock's broken off. It had been repaired once before already. So our guitar player was ready to call it a loss and just take the parts off and use them for something else. But I saw it as an opportunity to use my woodworking skills and try something new. So I've glued back on the headstock, and I'm going to walk you through a slideshow of the steps that I took to get that back on there, and then I'll come back and we'll play it and see what it sounds like.
Here's a picture of where the headstock broke off the end of the neck. It looks like it's mahogany, and it was a pretty clean break with no splinters, so I knew I was going to get a nice tight-fitting joint. I removed the truss rod cover, and then I removed the tuning pegs from the headstock. After removing the tape, I could see that it was an Epiphone Les Paul copy and not a real Les Paul, so that made me feel a little bit better about attempting this repair. Before putting any glue on, I did a test fit to make sure the joint was going to fit together tightly, and it fit really well. I did some research and found out that Titebond wood glue is one of the recommended glues for guitar repair. You could also use CA glue or polyurethane construction adhesive. I had some Titebond 2 on hand, so I went with that. I spread the glue evenly across both surfaces and then pressed the joint together and held it there for a few minutes so it would start to bond. I used 3 spring clamps to clamp the joint together, and I could tell by the glue squeeze out that I was going to get a good bond. If you look closely underneath that glue line, you can see the crack where the guitar was repaired the first time. Glue squeeze out on the top was also an indicator that I was getting good clamping pressure evenly across the joint. I waited about 20 minutes for the joint to bond a little more so it wouldn't slide under more clamping pressure, and then I replaced one of the spring clamps with a C-clamp. I waited 2 days for the glue to dry before putting the joint under any stress. I tested it by pressing down on the headstock to see if it would lift the weight of the guitar body. I also flipped it upside down and tested it again from the other side. Now that the joint was glued together and tested, I turned my attention to repairing the cracks and chips in the finish. I used a chisel and a card scraper to remove any dried beads of glue and to make the joint smooth. I used Titebond medium CA glue to fill in any cracks, chips, and voids in the joint. I did keep one of the paint chips, this large one, and tried to glue it in with CA glue, but it was very hard to position and clamp into place, so I ended up discarding it and just filling in the void with CA glue. It took a few layers of CA glue to make that chipped area become level with the rest of the headstock. After all the glue had dried, I used my palm sander to sand everything flush and smooth. I kept the blue tape on the headstock to cover up the logo and the other areas I didn't want to sand, so that I would only sand the area where I put the CA glue. I used my spools of Turner sandpaper to sand the neck and the front of the headstock up to 600 grit prior to painting. Here's a picture of the headstock after I painted it with Rust-Oleum 2X gloss black paint and removed the masking tape that was covering the logo and the neck. The back of the neck was actually blue, but I just used the black paint and created sort of a burst or fade effect. After spraying about 8 light coats of spray lacquer, I was able to put the truss rod cover and the tuning pegs back on. In this picture of the back of the neck, you can see how the black fades into the blue. And I used Johnson's paste wax to wax both the front and the back and give them a more glossy finish. So here's the repaired headstock, and if you look closely you can tell it's been repaired, but the goal really was to get this back in playable condition, and I think I accomplished that.
enjoyed watching the process of getting this headstock glued back onto this guitar and basically giving it its third life. I really enjoyed the process, and it was really cool to use my woodworking skills to try something new and different and challenging. I hope the repair lasts a long time, and I don't know if I would try to repair a real expensive guitar like a real Les Paul just yet. I'd want some more experience before I try to attempt that. But for now, I'm going to crank this up and play it some more. But I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.